This is every level of Dana White hating fighters. Explained. Level 1 is where Dana's frustration is subtle but undeniable. These aren't fighters he openly attacks, these are champions he just refuses to celebrate. And the perfect example of this is Stipe Miocic. Stipe is the greatest heavyweight of all time. Most consecutive heavyweight title defenses in UFC history, beat Daniel Cormier twice, destroyed Francis Ngannou, knocked out Alistair Overeem. But Dana White treated him like an inconvenience. At UFC 220, when Stipe defended his belt against Ngannou, the entire promotional campaign was built around Francis. Dana was visibly frustrated when Stipe dominated, and in a legendary moment of disrespect, Stipe refused to let Dana wrap the belt around his waist. He had his coach do it instead. Dana's issue with Stipe was simple. He was a blue-collar firefighter from Cleveland who didn't talk trash or generate viral moments. He was effective but quiet. And Dana hates quiet champions. He repeatedly said the division needed to move on whenever Stipe took time off, a pressure tactic he never used on favorites like Jon Jones. Level 1 is where you're successful, but Dana wishes you weren't. Level 2 is where Dana doesn't hate you personally, he just needs you to lose, and when you don't, he'll rewrite reality to protect his investment. Jared Gordon is the perfect example. At UFC 282, Jared Gordon fought Paddy Pimblett, the UFC's newest golden boy. Most media members scored the fight for Gordon. He controlled the grappling, landed better boxing, and clearly won the fight. But the judges gave it to Paddy in a unanimous decision that everyone knew was wrong. Instead of acknowledging the controversy, Dana went full attack mode on Gordon at the post-fight press conference. He said Jared Gordon's game plan sucked. He went in the third round thinking he had the first 2 rounds won and he coasted. You can't coast in the third round. This was completely false. Gordon controlled the third round against the fence. But Dana needed to shift the conversation away from judging incompetence and onto fighter error. By blaming Gordon's fight IQ, he made the robbery seem like Gordon's fault. And it didn't stop there. When Gordon later withdrew from a fight due to a concussion, Dana mocked him, saying, "You're not a doctor, you didn't cure yourself from a concussion." Gordon's crime wasn't being a bad fighter. His crime was almost beating Paddy Pimblett, a fighter Dana had invested millions in promoting. Level 2 is where Dana will throw you under the bus to protect his business. Now we're getting to fighters Dana actively dislikes because of how they win. Level 3 is stylistic contempt, and the best example is Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling became UFC bantamweight champion with a disqualification win over Petr Yan. Dana hated that moment. Sterling accepted the belt after being kneed illegally, and Dana never let him forget it. Sterling went on to defend the belt 3 times, tying the record for most consecutive bantamweight title defenses. But Dana never celebrated him. Instead, he publicly threatened Sterling with interim titles when he was recovering from a bicep injury. He said, "If you're not healthy, don't take the fight, we'll have somebody else fight." Dana repeatedly called Sterling someone who can't get out of his own way, implying he was unlikable and bad at PR. Sterling eventually responded on YouTube, asking, "At what point do I get credit from Uncle Dana?" The root issue? Sterling was a grappler who won by control, not violence, and Dana views grapplers as threats to the entertainment value of the product. Sterling was a dominant champion, but his style didn't generate the highlight reel knockouts Dana demands. Level 3 is where winning isn't enough. Dana wants you to win his way. Level 4 is where Dana stops criticizing your style and starts attacking your intelligence. This is character assassination, and the perfect example of this is Merab Dvalishvili. Merab Dvalishvili held the UFC Bantamweight Championship until December 2025. He went on a 14-fight win streak, the 4th longest in UFC history, beating legends like Jose Aldo, Petr Yan, Henry Cejudo, and Sean O'Malley. He's one of the most durable and relentless fighters in the sport, but Dana White could not stand him. The breaking point came before UFC 306 at the Sphere. Dana had invested over $20 million into the event. Merab posted a video on social media showing a small cut above his eye. Dana lost his mind. At a press conference, he went on an unhinged rant. "Our guys are so dumb, it's next level unbelievable. It is next level stupid. Some of these guys are so stupid it's mind-boggling." This wasn't just frustration. This was Dana publicly calling his own champion an idiot. And it wasn't the first time. After Merab defeated Jose Aldo in a grappling-heavy decision, Dana said he didn't do himself a lot of favors tonight. Translation: winning wasn't enough because it wasn't entertaining. Dana also publicly criticized Merab for refusing to fight his teammate Aljamain Sterling, calling it a bad business decision that belonged in a different sport. The root cause? Dana viewed Merab as a spoiler, someone who derails exciting strikers and refuses to participate in the drama that sells pay-per-views. Merab had to win 14 straight fights to get a title shot that others received in 3. Level 4 is where Dana stops being subtle. He'll publicly insult your intelligence and your decisions to delegitimize everything you've accomplished. Level 5 is where the hate gets weaponized. Dana doesn't just criticize you, he uses your contract to suppress your value and force compliance. And nobody embodies this level more than Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz knew his worth. He beat Conor McGregor. He was one of the biggest draws in the sport, but Dana White once said the dumbest thing he's ever said. Nate Diaz is not a needle mover. This was a deliberate lie to suppress Nate's pay. Dana knew Nate moved the needle. He just didn't want to pay him what he was worth. For years, Nate tried to fight out his contract so he could leave the UFC and make real money in boxing, but the UFC held him hostage. Nate publicly said, "They're holding me hostage, I want out, they don't want me out of contract." Dana's response? Gaslighting. He said, "When isn't Nate Diaz saying something crazy?" When the UFC was finally forced to book Nate, they matched him against Khamzat Chimaev, one of the most terrifying prospects in the sport. This was a hitman booking, designed to destroy Nate's value before he hit the open market. Luckily for Nate, Khamzat missed weight and the fight fell apart. Nate eventually fought out his contract and went on to make millions boxing Jake Paul, proving Dana wrong in the most public way possible. The root cause of Dana's hatred? Leverage. Nate had the power to leave and make money elsewhere, and Dana hates losing stars he created to competitors. Level 5 is where Dana weaponizes the contract itself. He'll freeze you out, book you against killers, and do everything possible to kill your momentum before you can escape. Level 6 is where it stops being business and becomes deeply personal. This is where Dana attacks your appearance, your character, and your dignity. And the most brutal example of this is Cris Cyborg. Cris Cyborg is a Grand Slam champion. She's held titles in the UFC, Bellator, Strikeforce, and Invicta. She's one of the most dominant female fighters of all time. But Dana White hated her before she even signed with the UFC. At an MMA awards show, Dana said, "When I saw her at the MMA awards,
she looked like Vanderlei Silva in a dress and heels." And she did. Didn't she not?
This wasn't strategy. This was bullying. Dana attacked Cyborg's physical appearance because he viewed her as a threat to Ronda Rousey, his star at the time. He demonized Cyborg to build Rousey, and by the time Cyborg actually joined the UFC, the bridge was already burned. The feud exploded after UFC 240, when Cyborg's team released a video with subtitles claiming Dana admitted to lying about her. Dana lost it. He called the video dirty and doctored. Even after Cyborg apologized for the translation error, Dana refused to reconcile. He publicly stated, "I will literally today have my lawyer draft a letter. We're out of the Cyborg business." Dana didn't just criticize her fighting. He attacked her as a person, compared her to a man, and then severed ties completely. Level 6 is where Dana's hatred becomes unforgivable. This is personal destruction. Level 7 is total war. This is where Dana doesn't just hate you. He tries to erase you from history. And there's only one fighter who truly belongs here, Francis Ngannou. Francis is the only UFC champion in history to leave the organization without losing his belt. He knocked out Stipe, Alistair Overeem, and Cain Velasquez. He became the lineal heavyweight champion. And then he did the unthinkable. He walked away. Francis wanted health insurance for fighters and structural changes to the UFC's business model. Dana refused. So Francis left for the PFL in boxing. Dana's response was scorched earth. He pushed the narrative that Francis was scared of Jon Jones, saying Francis wants to take zero risks. He obviously didn't want to take a chance with Jon Jones. But it got worse. Dana allegedly told a story on a podcast where he claimed Francis physically intimidated executives, saying he put his hand on my chest and said, "We're not done talking yet." And then came the erasure. In a UFC 305 countdown video, the production team edited Francis Ngannou's name out of a quote by Israel Adesanya, listing African champions. When confronted, Dana claimed ignorance, but admitted his rhetoric causes his staff to make such edits. Dana also said on a podcast, "There was nothing that made me happier than throwing that guy over to the PFL." But here's the thing, Francis proved Dana wrong. He boxed Tyson Fury and almost won. He became a PFL champion and made generational wealth outside the UFC. And Dana stayed silent through all of it because Francis's success was a threat to everything the UFC stands for. Francis Ngannou didn't just leave the UFC, he exposed the system. He proved fighters don't need Dana White to be successful. And for that, Dana will never forgive him. Level 7 is the erasure. This is where Dana tries to rewrite history and pretend you never existed. But Francis Ngannou's legacy is too big to erase. These are the 7 levels of Dana White hating fighters. From benign neglect to total erasure. The lesson? In the UFC, your biggest opponent isn't always the person across the cage. Sometimes it's the man holding the microphone at the press conference.